Hi all, and welcome to Brick by Brick, the podcast for the property development industry. My name is Ian Humphreys and I am a co-founder of Brickflow and one of your hosts. Each week we'll be speaking to experts and stakeholders from across the property development sector. We'll share ideas and advice on how to get ahead of the game as a developer, as well as trends and insights from across the sector. The series is designed for all experience levels. Whether you're just starting out on your property development journey or you're an industry veteran, we'll handpick topics with universal appeal so we can all continue to learn. We'd also love you to share the podcast with your development industry network. Our mission through Brickflow and the podcast is to make development finance better. Every year, somewhere between a third and a half of all SME property developers cite lack of finance as the main reason they don't build more. It's only through raising awareness of the problems that developers face that we will improve. The more people will hear this, the more the industry will pay attention and the better it will become for all of us. So please share as far and wide as you can. We also really want you to join the conversation. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests or thoughts on any of the podcasts, we'd love to hear from you. Get in touch through LinkedIn or Facebook or email us at podcast@brickflow.com. I hope you enjoyed the show. This week, I'm delighted to welcome Mike Bristow, CEO and co-founder of CrowdProperty. For those that don't know, CrowdProperty are a peer-to-peer specialist development finance lender. They were founded in 2014 and are very much on an upward trajectory. The main reason I wanted to get Mike on the show is for him to talk about the P2P space and the part it has to play in the future of property lending. As we've highlighted before on the show, non-bank lenders have filled the space that has been left by traditional lenders, retreating from the specialist finance market. And P2P is a key contributor to that non-bank market. The P2P model offers fantastic returns to investors at a time when returns are hard to come by. And it offers SME house builders an outlet for schemes which might not be attractive enough to bank lenders. It works for both sides, but there is a careful balance of risk and reward, and I'm interested to find out from Mike and CrowdProperty how they strike that balance. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Ian. Great to be here.
Good to see you. Okay, so we like to start every show with understanding the journey that you've been on to date, your career, how you got into property, do you love what you do? That's what gets you up in the morning. That's what we want to know.
Definitely. I'll wind back in a second, but first and foremost, absolutely love it. Have a huge passion for it, and it drives me and us as a team immensely. I think that's fundamental to building great businesses. So many years ago, I graduated with a master's in mechanical engineering, so a very quant-heavy degree. Went into management consultancy, specifically in the strategy space, so advising major corporates and private equity funds on strategy for their businesses and buyouts and M&A and things. And did an MBA at London Business School, which is an incredible experience, incredible network you pick up there. And then started piecing together a few sort of different dots. And I'd been investing in property since 2002, and it was pretty easy back then. Sort of buy something, rent it out, refinance it, and buy some more. So over the years, I've grown a pretty big portfolio and quite across quite a different set of strategies as well, levels of refurb, development, target tenant markets, geographies, etc. And sort of started piecing together the sort of the corporate mentality, the strategy mentality, the investment mentality and then technology insight, thinking, well, look, technology has a massive, far greater part to play in the world's largest asset class. So I started to look at that quite seriously. And back in, I think before prop and tech had been put together, been called property technology or other things. And I started investing in prop tech businesses. And fast forward now, I'm invested in 20 plus prop tech startups, many of whom have really caught traction and really flown. And I sit on the investment committee of Europe's most active venture capital fund called Pi Labs. So sort of really live and breathe that sort of prop tech sort of emergence and the brilliant businesses that are coming out of UK and European prop tech. And also looked at in 2014, we founded, actually 2013, end of 2013, but we started lending in 2014. We founded CrowdProperty, and I'll talk about a bit more about the why later, but we're I'm basically bringing together a load of that corporate mentality, private equity mentality, VC mentality into growing a brilliant business at CrowdProperty. And to bring us right up to speed, we've lent not far off £100 million. We funded the development of 1,000 homes worth over 170 million, 60 million of spend in the economy. And that traction only happens if you put the customer at the heart of the proposition. And that's the business we've built. We've got a team of 32, brilliant team, super talented, multi-dimensional team. Everything's in-house in the business, the culture and control. And that brings us up to now, I guess. But crucially, those numbers are only the start. We are looking at orders of magnitude greater.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing story, and thank you for sharing. I mean, for those that don't know CrowdProperty, you obviously touched on it there, but how would you explain the business and the model? Give us your elevator pitch.
Yeah, so it's not a 30-second elevator pitch. It never is. We founded CrowdProperty as property investors and developers ourselves, a co-founding team. Been in it for decades through multiple cycles, have stuck hundreds of spades in the ground, and said funding for SME property developers is a pain in the arse.
Correct.
Okay? Yeah. It wasn't fit for purpose. And it was so far away from putting the customer center to the proposition. Okay? Mm-hmm. So forget the peer-to-peer bit. Okay, we're a development lender, right? Yeah. So for the sake, so we are a marketplace, but you've got to compete and be the best at each side of the market. So let's talk about the property side, the borrowing side. And so we said, right, well, we're going to take out the banks and the non-bank lenders, and we're going to build a better lender. And we're going to go out and we're going to build the best lender in the market for SME property professionals doing quality property projects. Mm-hmm. And that's what we built. So we really intimately understand that the needs, the pains, etc., of SME property professionals going about their business, what they're looking for from their lender, what they're looking for in terms of a partner throughout their property journey and the growth of their business. And so we built entirely around that. And there's a couple of elements to that. A huge amount of technology that's involved in it, and that's for efficiency, both external to the business, but also internally within the business. And then a huge amount of expertise, but real life expertise. We have been in the shoes of SME property developers doing exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. That gives us not only underwriting advantage in that we really, really understand the challenges, etc., in terms of choosing the loans, but we also add value and support throughout.
Yeah.
And that means, and the right outcome, is that project gets delivered and exited. Okay, that's not rocket science, but you work together on that, it's powerful. Okay. So for example, I use this analogy, I don't know why, but nobody ever phoned, I don't know, Lloyd's Bank and said, I've got this problem on site. Do you know what's going on? Or can you help? The reality is, if you manage to speak to a human, then it's an administrator, and if you actually manage to speak to someone who sort of was expert in the field, then you're more likely to hear rustling for first charge security papers than helpful responses.
Yeah.
So whereas our borrowers phone us up and say, hey, what do you think about this? And it's like, yeah, don't worry, we've seen it scores of times before. Here we go, just do this. Or, yeah, do you know what? That's a challenge. We'll be on site. Let's crack it together. So our proposition is very much property finance by property people, and with the customer at the heart. And that is the entire genesis of the business. Build the best lender, okay, and incorporating that as a partner for the lifetime of that property development business, and just deliver for for the customer and to their needs.
I think that's definitely the best way of coming at it in this space, because there are lenders, and I call it lending by spreadsheet. They've kind of they know the analytics, they know the stats, but they don't have that real life experience that you've just talked about. And I think it's a huge difference in this space.
The reality is, you can have the most complex spreadsheet models and platform analytics and data and market data, etc., and we've got all of that. That's the easy bit.
Yeah.
Actually, the two complex bits are the best project in the world can be stuffed up by a human.
Yes.
Right? And one of the worst projects can probably be delivered by a brilliant human. So, really, it's about close personal relationships as well as all the data, the analytics. Very, very closely with people to understand their motivations and ambitions initially, but also working with them to support throughout.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that. We had a question this week from a lady who follows us on LinkedIn, and she asked when would I use a development lender and when would I use a bridging lender, gave her quite a response on that. But I think what really resonated is kind of what you just talked about there is that specialism. If you're doing anything that is development, not refurb, that can be done by bridging lenders, absolutely. But if it's ground up or a sizable PD scheme, you absolutely want to be using a development lender. Not a bridging lender that says they do development finance, was kind of the message back.
And where we evolved to is that yes, we are a development lender. The way we describe ourselves is, if you've got a project, whatever that project is, and you need short-term funding requirement, but before your exit is either sell or refi and keep and add to the portfolio and yield. Anything short-term will do. So anything from development finance ground up through to refurb, HMO conversion, joint ventures. We do, and this is slightly cross definitions, but modular. We funded many modular things. We've got dedicated products for that, for joint ventures, for auction finance, for bridging, etc. And often what you find is, you're absolutely right. Bridging and development is kind of like it's a spectrum of greys. Really, it's short-term funding. But you're right. The place where that deep expertise is absolutely paramount is when you're building something or knocking something down and building it. So many people underestimate the complexities around whether it's critical path or utility connections or drainage solutions or the implications of working with listed buildings, etc.
Yeah, I think if you get into a situation, something's going to go wrong. It always does, and I think as you've touched on, at that point you want a lender that is going to be patient, is going to have seen that problem before, help you overcome it, and not panic, pull the trigger. And that's what you get from a specialist development lender.
And our team. So one of my co-founders, a chap called Andrew Hall, is 35 years RICS qualified. He's built millions of square foot in residential and commercial. And he's seen many ups and downs in the markets. He's put hundreds of spades in the ground. He's grumpy as hell. But that makes often what you need is a good dose of pessimism to say actually risk. We have this thing called property entrepreneurs optimism. Okay, it's when someone comes to us and say, "Hey, I'll be in and out in 12 months." And in some cases in the market, well, look, lenders will say, "Great, happy days, 12 months, you'll never be, and we'll put you onto late interest rates when you're late." We'll say, let's call it 16 or 18 months, and if you pay back early, great, you're not paying for that. It's totally different attitudes that says, again, a customer-centric but partnership attitude that doesn't say, look, we win by making the most of money out of a single loan. No, we all win together by working together and making that more efficient and better each time we work together, and we continue to grow and flourish.
Yeah. No, I agree with all of that. What kind of CEO are you? And what's the part that you most enjoy about your job?
So I tried to take last week off, and my team didn't really think I took any time off. So
you responded to emails.
Yeah, I'm quite. I am. I live and breathe this. I'm immensely passionate about what we're doing. I'm a total perfectionist in how we go about things and work with our customers and serve our customers best, and manage our data. Our data and our tech is our sort of crown jewels in our business, and we make sure we sort of take a world leading attitude to that. I'm also a sort of a deeply competitive individual, not in the bad sense, not in the sort of the evil sense, but in the look. I like to do things best, and we go about with an attitude in our business of doing things the best we possibly can, both internally and externally. So what comes with that is quite, I do get stuck in saying that my natural background is long-term thinking for corporates and private equity funds. So we take a very, very strategic approach to the market and building our market presence. We've got an incredible roadmap of developments that is very, very exciting, that will challenge us, that will deliver incredible value to the market.
So you're 6 years in, but you're only at the start.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. Basically, what we've done is we've gone about, and it's really important. You go through stages in a business. Yeah, you get initial traction. You prove you can, go through full loan cycles. You prove you can recover. We've got a perfect track record, and now that now what we effectively have is, I've talked about, I can now say we've built the best lender in the market, in my view. Okay, I'm biased, but it's a brilliant service to exactly our target market. Where we now are at, and this, technically, we are classified as a peer-to-peer lender. Okay? And this is really, really interesting because, I said, look, don't worry where the capital comes from, because we have perfectly reliable capital. And effectively, over the years now, we've built up diverse sources of capital, which includes retail, high net worth, ultra high net worth, funds, and institutions. So diverse sources of capital, diverse types of capital, and many sources within each of those types. Okay, and why? Because we always knew the reliability of capital was paramount.
Yeah,
and that is what we proved entirely through lockdown. So we have set our own funding records through lockdown. We've been pretty much the only lender in the market lending through lockdown. Okay, and one of the reasons is because we have a diverse source of capital. Many lenders out there have a single source of wholesale capital, where because of the linkage into equity market volatility and things, those wholesale sources are happy to pause for a bit.
Yeah,
and that can be destructive for the lender. It can be hugely destructive for the borrowers, particularly. So what we've perfectly proven now through toughest times that we are a very, very reliable source of funds, and that diversity of capital is increasing on a monthly level as we're bringing on new sources, and that brings a really powerful lending business to the market.
Yeah, I think just from our side, there were lenders that, as you say, had to pause. There are lenders that are still paused, and it does does make you wonder how, what's going on behind the scenes. Like, is this something, are they going to come back into the market? People that have come in, perhaps not as aggressively. So to have a lender that basically made no changes whatsoever, off the top of my head, I can only think of a couple, of which you're one. It really is quite a feather in the cap, as it were.
Yeah, it's and that's when you prove yourself. it's times like this when actually it's really important to remember the correct questions during this time, because in the good times, you still need to be asking your lender, right, what's your source of capital? How reliable is it?
Yeah.
That's crucial because, as we know, pandemic could happen at any point.
Yeah.
So understanding that, and that drives right through, because what we've seen is not only offers being reneged upon, but we've also seen drawdowns refused, not for the support of the project, but because of the sources of the capital.
Yeah.
And that is destructive. And we've refinanced people out that are in that situation.
Right.
We've done it a number of times through this market. So the point here is that it's often, and this is one of our the perceptions we're trying to shift. The myths here is that people are deeming peer-to-peer lending, or sometimes called crowdfunding, that's more the equity side, the sort of the debt peer-to-peer lending sector, as a different sector.
Yeah.
But it's not. I mean, what it is, we're a development lender, okay? And we compete with other development lenders. We've got to be the best development lender, not the best peer-to-peer lending platform, best development lender.
Yeah.
And then we've got to offer our investors, our diverse sorts of investors, the best product in terms of risk and reward balance, okay? And if we're best on that side and best on that side, you put those together, it works. But many people sort of talk about, no, peer-to-peer lending is a single business. It's not. It's two different perspectives.
Well, all lenders are peer-to-peer, right?
Yeah. Exactly the point. The point. So ultimately what happens, that is such an insightful comment. All capital, okay, is owned by a person. Whether it's shares in a company or whatever, okay, they all come back down to a person. And it's just the path that money takes to go from the person all the way through to the person that's going to add value at the end of the chain using that money, and then meander back through. And so what you see is, traditionally, so my mother is a lender on our platform. So it's law, and I'm scared of both of them. And so traditionally, my mother might have said, right, I need to allocate some funds. Okay, I'm going to go and see an IFA. That IFA might say, put some money into this generalist fund. That generalist fund might say, I'm looking for some property exposure, so I'll put the money into a property fund. That fund might, will find a broker, and that broker will find some development deals. Suddenly, my mother's getting 1% return. It's her money. Yeah. It's like, but it's the market economy. So there's a cost, and the people are making profit out of it, and they're adding value. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. Yeah? But we said, well, let's scrap that. Let's do it directly. And that enables us to offer a better deal for the borrower and a better deal for the investor. And the way we describe that, the way we think about our business, is the most efficient matching the supply and the demand of capital that delivers value to everyone.
Yeah, I agree with that. The margin, the bit in the middle between investor and borrower, is totally dictated by how long you've been doing it, which is completely incorrect. Your ability to pick a deal isn't necessarily any better or worse than any bank. They can take money at 0.5% or less and lend it out at 6%. Whereas I don't know what your metrics are, but presumably you haven't got a 5.5% spread between investor and borrower.
We deliver better value both sides of the equation. But why? Well, we haven't got a big retail branch network, and we've got a brilliant tech platform that takes out a load of the efficiency of it. We don't have big city centre offices. We don't have huge staff bases. We don't have regulatory cost of capital, and all of that gets delivered back to our customers, either borrowers or lender side.
Yeah. No, it's definitely huge value add, especially on the investor side. You're delivering the same thing as their bank can, but giving them infinitesimal better percentages on their money.
So I'm just going to caveat that slightly. I know it was sort of talking more property side and borrower side, but I'm just going to caveat that because it's important to do so because we are an FCA regulated.
Yeah.
Investing with CrowdProperty is the capital is at risk and it's not yes protected, so it's different to bank savings account. But also the really interesting thing is that we can access the same tax benefits. So we have an ISA. So the CrowdProperty ISA enables 8% returns tax free, and also pension lending, so SAS pension lending and SIP pension lending. But but you're right. There's a lot of value there on the investor side, and then a load of the value on the borrower side is all about making it delivering speed, ease, certainty of capital. Okay, that then enables those people, the borrowers, the developers, not only to strike better deals because they can move quicker than anyone else competing for that site, and we plan people very early on and put proof of funds across very early on. But also, in our research and ourselves, we know that an SME developer might spend a third of their time looking for more sites, a third of their time executing on current sites, and a third of their time faffing around with funding. Yeah. So if we compress that, they grow their property businesses quicker. That is the outcome, and therefore, we build more houses as a country. We spend more in the economy, and hey, we need to do that right now.
Yeah, we're 100% aligned on that point because our whole reason for being is that if the funding is more efficient, it's cheaper to deliver, right? If funding's cheaper, then more houses get built, and more houses get built, that's better for everyone. As you say, like the economy benefits. Every person across the country benefits because they have more choice in housing, they have better housing. So it's important that you guys are successful, and hopefully our sort of platform idea is successful as well, because I think it has a better social benefit than just making developers richer.
Yeah, exactly. It's really important. I mean, developers haven't got the greatest name amongst the general public because of the perception of Porsches and Land Rovers and things.
Yeah.
Sorry. But it's fun right now. It's such a strategically important sector.
Hugely.
And I'll chuck some data at you briefly. So, it's no secret that we need to be building about 300,000 homes a year. We haven't got anywhere near that for decades. And remarkably, we seem to always build 200,000 homes, not 300.
Well, last year was the most we've built in 11 years. I think it was 177,000.
Yes.
So we kind of build, and we built more, I think, just before a crash. So it's kind of, we almost like build up, and then the economy crashes and we get further behind in that shortage.
Which is the reverse of Keynesian economics, which means the peaks are peakier and the troughs are troughier. I'm not sure if peakier and troughier are technical terms or not, but we'll run with it. So if you look back at 2008, we built 200,000 homes. Okay, so it depends on England and UK scope, but broadly 200,000 homes. And 30% of those 60,000 homes were delivered by small builders. Those supplying less than 100 units into the market each year. Yeah. Wind forward 9 years, okay, and sure enough, we built 200,000 homes again. But only 10%, 20,000 homes were delivered by small builders.
Yeah.
And so, as a good strategy consultant myself, I'd look at that market and say, well, don't touch it. It's a tanking market. It looks like a nightmare. Or there's a major barrier. And we know 42% of SME developers from our survey, which is one of the largest ever surveys in the market, 42% said the biggest barrier to me building more homes is sources of funding.
Yeah.
And the problem, the real problem, is not only are we therefore not moving forward in terms of building enough or spending enough in the economy. The real problem is that the slack there, the balance to the 200,000 was made up by large builders. And the challenge with large builders is that they play a really important role, but large sites, by definition, are scarce, and more of them are getting built out. Whereas builders, and there's almost infinite small parcels of land, small plots of land, etc., to build out. That is why that segment is so vital to housing supply in this country.
Don't all want to live in the same house, do we?
No. The crucial bit now is, it is Keynesian economics. Yeah, we need to invest now. Boris came out saying build. There's a spectrum of everything. Yeah, it's from HS2 down to just more affordable homes. We've got to build because it's so productive. That money goes straight into the economy in terms of labour, materials, services, etc. It's vital. And so unlocking and enabling that and getting more capital easier into the SME segment is exactly our purpose, and why it's so fundamentally important.
And it tends to stay in the economy as well. It's generally quite circular, isn't it? The UK market, you don't, pretty much anything else you look at, a lot of it is owned by, realistically, it's owned by people overseas. So it kind of disappears. Whereas actually, a lot, especially in the SME space, it's all going to be UK money. So it stays in the economy, which is much better for us. But okay, cool. So just talking about, we touched on obviously peer-to-peer and things like that. As a marketplace, it's obviously evolved hugely. It was the Conservative government last time around that kind of promoted it and said that it was something that was needed after the crash. But how are attitudes different to when you started 6 years ago to where they are today? Is it generally more accepted, do you feel? How do people talk about it with you?
I've been very aware of the sector for many, many years. I used to work with one of the founders of Funding Circle. And so, Zopa started in 2005 saying, right, let's match people to people with money. And, great, it was visionary. It was the first peer-to-peer lender globally. And Funding Circle came in soon after the GFC, when SME capital dried up, and brilliant insight on that business. And they, those businesses have both lent 5 billion plus. Then there was the proliferation of platforms. I think there are 56 directly regulated peer-to-peer lending platforms in the UK. Right. Now there are some others under indirect regulation, which is just not a great structure in my view. What we'll see now, one of the biggest criticisms of the overall sector, it hasn't been really challenged through economic downturns. This has really challenged the sector. Broadly, it falls into three buckets. Yeah, consumer lenders like Zopa, who'll do loans to people. SME business lenders like Funding Circle, and property lenders like CrowdProperty. They're the three dominant sectors. And consumer very much ramped up first, and SME, and now property as well. But stuff only catches on if it provides a better deal, and whether that is in economic terms or in service terms, which is indirectly economic. It only catches on if that is true, and it's better economically than the alternative, and that's why it's in such high growth. And we've talked about the economics, the structural advantage. So it is going to grow enormously. There are not many sectors in the. I can't think of a sector in the world that's as big, that is growing as fast. Let's put it that way. But for good economic reasons. Now, the challenge you get with a market that has I would say it has matured, if still in very high growth, is that you get a big spectrum of players, and there will be a serious filtering out of the wheat and chaff over the coming year, 2 years, as we face the real knock-on effects economically.
Yeah.
And everyone has to be wary of that, and everyone has to be careful about it, and everyone has to understand who they're borrowing from or platform they're investing in. That's natural, but look, it's economically advantaged. The UK and the US lead the world. Okay, and the UK in peer-to-peer as well as wider fintech, it's a world leader. We should be bloody proud of the businesses that the fintech sector is building, and be fully supportive of it, because they are exportable internationally. And Funding Circle is a good example. It's expanded internationally, and there are many huge success stories coming out of the UK and the fintech space. And fintech is it, the important bit is that it's not sort of whispering fin and then shouting tech. It's fin and tech. Okay, and what I said earlier, which was using technology for efficiency and expertise for effectiveness. That's your tech and your fin. And you need both. It's very easy for I've seen platforms out there just saying, hey, look, I've built a whiz bang platform. It's great. Okay. And look, you're in the lending space, you're only a lender if you get your money back. It's not just about how efficiently you match the supply and demand of capital. It's getting the money back as well. And therefore, you've got to know what you're doing, and therefore traditional financial expertise and asset class expertise is absolutely paramount.
I think that's the resistance I get from especially I guess with the banks and other institutional sources of capital. I've actually worked with lenders before on funding lines for businesses that are in the sort of, or started in the peer-to-peer space, and I think a lot of the wholesale money that underpins some lenders is quite dubious of peer-to-peer for reputational reasons, I think, which is fair as well, because they don't want to be on the front page of the paper if that lender goes under and Mr. and Mrs. Smith have lost their pension. So and I think for a lot of those lenders, the wholesale lenders I'm talking about, they see the next economic downturn as a real sort of barometer of whoever's still standing. They're the ones that we can back going forward, and I think that will be a real test of the model. I mean, how do you see that playing out? I mean, there was a lender obviously last year that went under, Lendy, and people may have heard about, and that obviously taints the sector as a whole. Are there things that the regulatory things that could be done to kind of protect that, stop that happening again? But also, how do you feel the market will shape up if we do, in fact, go into a downturn or go into a bit of a recession? What will happen to the market as a whole?
I mean, so firstly, there's stronger regulation now in place, and there's a lot of learning by the FCA out of the Lendy situation. Also better questions are being asked of platforms. So for example, okay, I mean, our sort of conversion rate is very, very low. We're picky. We're a quality first lender, and there were some other platforms out there that aren't quality last resort lenders, and the problem there was that the last resort lender, investors didn't ask, why am I getting 13%?
Right, yeah.
They're saying, great, I'm getting 13%. But if they're getting 13%, then the borrower is probably paying 18, 19%. So we should be asking, well, why is the borrower paying 18 or 19%? Surely they can borrow money cheaper elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of the lender of last resort. And
I don't think you expect to get your money back, do you, if you're lending at 18%?
Yeah, and there were lots of issues with various businesses that haven't succeeded, and it's all about the people who are doing this properly. And this is part of a maturing of a market. The problem here problem is that, if it's like you're, I don't know, it's a donut shop selling donuts and 3 have opened up and it'll be survival of the fittest. The worst thing that, that consumers lose out on is maybe the unique flavor of the worst donut shop. It's but in this case, it's money. Okay, this is people's money. And that's very, very important. So, understanding the dynamics of the rates and what is because of efficiency, is that reliable because of the expertise? What's the security underpinning it? And wait a minute, why is the borrower paying that? And understanding those economics is quite a complex argument, and not all platforms are transparent about revealing that information. We show all of that on our statistics page. The maturing sector means that we'll see fallouts, and I just sort of hope that it doesn't affect too many people. The FCA have teeth at the moment, and they are biting, which is great to see, because in our view there is a spectrum of operating practices in the market, and in our view quite a lot of that is not acceptable or not good. I guess you can refer back to my perfectionistic traits that I talked about before. So in terms of how we approach that.
Yeah. So so the sector as a whole, sort of going into a downturn, you touched on there that you feel that some might not shape up too well, but do you see some consolidation? You said there's 56 regulated at the moment. How many we're going to have in a couple of years? More, less?
Well, I spoke to someone recently, I won't even allude to who thinks there'll be 12 in a year. Right. I don't think it'll be that as extreme as that. But I think, it's very easy to be scaremongering. Okay. It's really important to remember, that broadly, you're an investor investing on a peer-to-peer lending platform has a loan contract with that borrower, and now the FCA have required wind-down plans. So look, if the platform goes under, you don't lose your money like that. There's a wind-down procedure of that arrangement with the borrower. So I shouldn't scaremonger everyone out of the sector. That there are stronger provisions in place, but the reality is that may compromise the integrity of the loan, the partnership of the loan, and the recovery of that loan.
Yeah.
So you need to look and understand the business that you're backing. So what will happen? Will there be consolidation? Maybe not. There's been talked about that for years in the sector. The reality is the cream rises to the top. The best of the best win. The people that are proving themselves right now through the tough times, and the people who've just built better businesses. You come back to the whole thing. The stability of the business is about the fundamentals of the proposition and the business model. And if the fundamentals of the proposition are concentrating on deep-seated pains that are being solved brilliantly, then that business has a very strong likelihood of being a successful, large, and ever-growing business.
Like a metaphor for property development, strong foundations.
Perfect. Yes, indeed.
I like it.
It's so important. Because the other thing is that some platforms are under-resourced as well to be able to really do everything in the rigor that's required. But look, the principle, as I say, the principle of the sector is delivering a better deal, both economically and service-wise, and that's what we think very, very hard.
Okay, great. All right, so moving on slightly, obviously we've just come out of lockdown, and we're slowly coming back to whatever the new normal is. How coronavirus? You talked about how it didn't really affect your business in terms of you were still able to lend as you normally would. But I'm talking more really about the industry, but also kind of wider society, I guess, as well, but more specific to the property sector. What do you think the outcomes are going to be of this sort of lockdown period that we've just had. How will it affect, our businesses in the development sector, perhaps, but, also how we build and society as a whole going forward?
There will be enduring demand for residential real estate. Okay. Now, prices will fluctuate based on supply and demand, fundamentally. But there is strong underpinning demand. The question is ability to pay. I believe that the residential real estate market, the way I look at the current position is, should we expect something like 08, 09 or not? And I break that down into two ways. Number one, is there a price correction that's been waiting to happen, and at which a shock causes? And when you actually run the real house price index rather than the nominal house price indices, so i.e. inflation adjusting, we're well below 2007 values right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we saw a 10 to 12 year bull run in real property prices leading into 07 and 08 that then had a debt market shock and shut down the debt market. Sorry. That's the next point. So I don't see a correction waiting to happen on the inflation adjusted data. Again, this is averages. Yeah, there'll be pockets of challenge. Then you look at what's the outlook for sort of ongoing supply and demand. And we're not building enough. We'll build less this year. But in 08, 09, what happened was that lots of people suddenly needed to sell. And then the banks started repossessing and started to sell. And there was no debt market and nobody could buy. And 19% falls later, 83 months to recover. That's problematic, seriously problematic. I think in this market, the best, you sort of look at how property market commentators forecasts change, a good indicator. And I think Savills have been quite good, actually, been quite consistent with their expectations on house prices, down 5 to 10% this year, recovered back up in 5 years' time, back to where they expected to be. And that hasn't shifted. And I think that's quite a sensible forecast. I think that, where we'll see the challenge is obviously the uncertainty of unemployment and how that affects individual segments of the demographics and geography. So from an opportunistic perspective for property developers and property investors, will there be deals of the century this year? No. There will be good deals to find.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a lot of people looking for them. Okay. And part of the reason why is that in any market there are people that need to sell, but some people who will think about selling may be able to defer that sale for 6 months, and the debt market will recover much quicker.
Yeah.
We're not back to 95% high street residential mortgages aren't back. That's the benchmark. When that's back, the debt market's in a good place.
Yeah.
And so we won't see the extremity of increased supply and reduced demand that we saw in 08 and 09. But there were, there's always deals to find. Always deals to find. Developers out there can really be opportunistic. And from my perspective, I think it's never been more important to have, the team around you that can act damn quick. If someone's selling in this market, they can't afford to wait for 6 months for the debt market to come back.
Yeah.
And therefore, having the team, the legal team, but especially the lender around that says you can move faster than anyone else. You can provide speed and certainty to that vendor. And that built our business around is providing speed, ease, and certainty. So that sort of resi outlook, commercial, I think, is a horror story. on many levels apart from warehousing and grocery, even office. It's going to be fascinating to see in a year's time how does footfall and foot traffic compare around, say, City of London to where it was, in November 2019. It will be worlds apart. I'm not a believer, and our business is not a believer at all, that we will not have an office going forward. Culture and human interaction and innovation that comes from passing conversations are core, absolutely core to the brilliance of our team. So I don't sign up to the Twitter never having an office again. This, it may suit some businesses, but it for me, you said, okay, I'm sat at home, sat at my desk at home. I could be working for company A or company B. I don't really care. They don't really have an identity or whatever. Where that loses what humans need and crave. But there will be significantly less office space per worker going forward as flexibility has been booted into that. And then lots of other sectors. I won't start rambling on about those as well. But we enter the next. This is the end of the beginning right now. And there's a lot to play out here. And what I am absolutely certain of is that a lot of the stimulus that will come from the government, both from policy but also capital, will be underpinning build. There is going to be a huge opportunity for property developers, and in my view, especially in the SME side, create value.
Recent changes in planning policy echo that as well, right? National house builders, PLCs, are not interested in adding another couple of stories to existing buildings. That's the SME space. So absolutely agree. I think we have a very supportive government, which is crucial. It's just interesting on your point on house prices, and I definitely agree that the difference this time around is there is actually still lending available to clients. So prices can only fall so far because people can still borrow. That's the fundamental difference between this time and last time. So there is a bottom, a much shallower, drop. A
quicker return.
Yeah, agreed. But what's quite interesting, especially on our platform, is what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of the search data. You've kind of got this juxtaposition of like pricing. So, and what I mean by that is, so people are factoring in a drop in GDV in their end values, and then they're increasing their build costs and maybe their build term to make allowances for the uncertainty around COVID. But what is happening is that you've got the land prices are still the same as they were, because the sellers, almost buried their heads in the sand and still want the same price they wanted 6 months ago. So you've got pre-COVID land prices, but you've got post-COVID build and post-COVID GDV. So you kind of got this land price up here, build costs has gone up and GDV's come down. And what we're seeing is that deals, it's difficult to make some deals work. Marginal deals, perhaps at 20% or high teens percentage of profit margins, and now low teens. So it's going to take a while for that to feed through. But going back to your point, I think Q4 this year, Q1, Q2 next year, when the government drip of money has been turned off, and perhaps lenders that are being patient at the moment because the government have kind of set the tone. I think we'll perhaps be a bit more pushy with borrowers, and you might start seeing some opportunities come to the market. But
exactly, residual land value is hypersensitive to GDP movement, and you've got to believe that landowners are going to factor that in, or they need to wait. That's the reality.
I think we just see maybe more overages and sort of deferred land payments, things like that. I think, that's a legitimate way of trying to negotiate with a seller at the moment and say, well, look, if I get 800 a foot or 500 a foot, I will pay you that price, but I'll do it at the end. If I only get 450, your land is not worth what you think it is,
Exactly. And also, good old fundamental landowner JVs. We fund quite a lot of that because, again, we're property people. So, we've done all of these deal structures. We understand them all. We love working with people on complex, smart deals. We don't scratch our heads, lend less and charge more. We engage and think, well, actually, that's a really smart property structure. So, actively engage.
I think there's a million different ways to structure deals, and I think the non-bank sector specifically is just much more adept at dealing with that complexity. Okay, so moving on. As you know, we're Brickflow. We're very much introducing more technology into the sector as a whole. We believe the industry is horribly inefficient, as you and I have touched on, and it's probably the last sector to be untouched by technology in the whole. You're really hot on your technology compared to perhaps other players, but what are your views on technology in the sector as a whole? Where are the quick wins, do you think, and where do you see it going? And perhaps with your sort of in the PI advisory hat on, you're obviously seeing you're at the forefront of prop tech development. What excites you?
Firstly, it reminds me. It was a couple of years ago, and I was presenting in front of a room full, literally at like a couple of hundred, quite old school real estate people. Okay, and I put up a slide which was the conclusion from a McKinsey study comparing technology adoption across sectors, and it likened. It must be 3 years ago, and it likened property and its adoption of technology to basic manufacturing and agriculture.
Right.
That slide did not go down well in that room. Let's put it that way. It was. I didn't really think through the audience, but it certainly gave a bit of a boost up the arse. But look, it's huge potential. My view is it's the world's largest asset class. It's physical asset class. Utilization is a massive thing. Efficiency is a massive thing. There's huge potential now. Where prop tech has shifted from 5 years ago, say, I saw hundreds of pitch decks saying, I can help estate agencies convert some more leads or whatever.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds of micro solutions that from kids that had no idea that the estate agency market really just wants to crack on, not have to manage another system in and use another system and learn another system and pay for another system, and et cetera, through to some quite, some really powerful disruptive businesses. My first investment in the sector was a business called Hubble, which is an office marketplace business.
I know them, yeah.
It was incredible tech. Tushar and Tom there are great. Through to a business called Ask Porter, which was basically AI block management and management of tenants issues and building maintenance issues. And that was Google Assistant's first investment in Europe. That's how much they rated that AI technology. It's real AI, not just something .ai in the web address.
Yeah.
And where is it going? Will basically follow the inefficiency, follow the resource intensivity, and that is construction is an obvious space there, right from design, workflow management, health and safety, on the software side, right through to robotics. And there's going to be enormous potential there. But the robotics side is quite way out there. Actually, or that will happen in the modular factory. So modular has a huge part to play as a sector. It's not huge tech, so. But then, data analytics, valuation models, they'll get better. Our view on all of that is like we've got incredible data and tech and analytics, and we've got a huge sample size of projects in the UK now, billions and billions of pounds worth of application. And we can use that very valuably. But you still need a human to observe architectural integrity or condition or things like that, especially around residential real estate. And so humans will always be involved, and we think about it as serving the best tech and data and analytics in front of expert human brains to make ultimate decisions. They're very different tick box type attitude.
I mean, are we all going to live in printed houses in 20 years?
Maybe 3D printed on the moon. So it's the way to create buildings on the moon. With 3D printing moon dust.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty
I
neat.
have the pitch deck on that. Quite a lot around asset management, analytics, utilization in large commercial spaces, optimization of that utilization, management of utilities, aircon, lighting, smart, sort of smart sensors throughout everything to optimize.
Personally, how do you feel about that? How comfortable are you with sensors on everything around the house?
Yeah, well, I'm more sensors largely around commercial buildings. I mean, I took the step of getting a Facebook portal TV, which because to keep linked up with my mother during lockdown. She wants to see her grandkids. My brother, who works in risk management at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, said, "There's no way I'm having one of those in my house." It will be personal choice to let me say. I'm quite relatively relaxed about that, and crucially, I haven't got up to about 100 likes on Facebook that I've given out, which I think is the threshold that means that Facebook knows you better than your other half.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I've never actually been on Facebook, so yeah, I'm much about it.
PropTech will have a huge part to play, and there's big players coming into the sector now, making big statements. Very recently, Microsoft making big plays into the sector. Google also.
Or Google building a town in Canada, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, the whole smart building, smart city thing, that's been mooted for a long time, and the challenge there is right. How do you start? I actually remember a few years ago I worked with Foster's, the architects firm. I was advising them on the economics behind the Estuary Airport. So it's quite a few years ago. It's brilliant because there was a piece of analytics I did that went to a Commons Select Committee where the answer was in the trillions of pounds. It was the potential GDP opened up with extra air capacity in this country.
Right.
Remember, I was working with one of the partners there, and he's a real visionary. And Foster's have this amazing place in Battersea that looks over the river onto Cheyne Walk in Chelsea.
Yeah.
Okay. And he sort of said, "Come to the window. Come to this 4-story window. Look over there. What do you see? Along Cheyne Walk, all you saw, was a white van delivering stuff. And this was 5 years ago, yeah, no more, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Okay, and so it'll be even more extreme now. It's like, this, that it was just especially with Amazon. It's just like, right, what we need is an airport-like conveyor system under every road. Okay, and it's like, well, yes, brilliant. You're right. It's impossible. But the principle there, the sort of visionary points around what needs to move and what doesn't need to move, what can move, etc. And then actually, it's a good example of where if you started from scratch in a city, you could build something absolutely incredible.
Yeah. If you built Milton Keynes again today, it would look slightly different.
Yeah, fewer roundabouts and better architecture. Yeah.
Okay, last question. Will P2P replace banks?
Okay, in strategy, I'm going to try and answer this without being so biased. In business strategy, if you have structural cost advantage versus your competitors, you will win. And that's because you're either going to profit more, or you're able to invest more in your proposition, or you're able to undercut prices, etc., etc., etc. You have greater power if there is greater economic efficiency, so structural cost advantage. That is what P2P has over financial services. On that basis, P2P will grow enormously on a global level. Was that unbiased enough?
No, yeah, that was unbiased, and to be, you can see why anyone would think it. I mean, I think that's we're going to that place, and there's a lot of steps on the way, and essentially, banks need to get more efficient, at what they're doing. These sort of big towers and huge cost overheads that they have, and the sort of wood paneled rooms, to have the best clients there. And these things shouldn't be footed by the man on the street. I completely buy into it.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say to developers out there that CrowdProperty doesn't have a client dining suite.
Exactly. Okay, well, great. Thanks for that, Mike. I mean, really good insight, really good to catch up. We've run out of time for today, so a big thank you to Mike Bristow of CrowdProperty. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a great chat.
Good to catch up. So that concludes the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Brick by Brick, the podcast for the property development industry. Speaking to Mike is always good fun, as he's hugely charismatic and really passionate about his business and what they're trying to do at CrowdProperty. I think the biggest learn from today was that change is coming. No longer can the industry remain in the holding pattern that it's been in for the last couple of decades. Borrowers want more from their lenders and quicker turnaround times, but investors want more as well. How can it be that I get 0.5% from a mainstream bank on my savings and then 7 or 8% from Mike and CrowdProperty, when ultimately my savings could be used to fund similar schemes and similar borrowers? CrowdProperty and other businesses like them are showing that development finance can be run on much smaller margins than has been the case historically. And it's this streamlining and cost efficiencies that ultimately mean they can compete with much bigger and more established lenders. Whichever way you look at it, the next 5 to 10 years in this space is going to be fascinating. Anyway, we'll be back again soon with another episode alongside other industry insiders sharing their own property journeys as well as their tips and tricks to help you get ahead in the property development industry. If you've enjoyed this show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a review and share the podcast with your property industry peers. And remember to get in touch about this topic or any future topic by emailing us at podcast@brickflow.com. Until next time, take care.